Good day, Doc. I greet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very well. I like your library.
Oh, I'm copying you now.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Who is smoking gun?
It's a hunter.
Is that Mr. Hunter?
Let me ping him.
Okay.
I'm setting up my second Airbnb.
Oh,
And
really? Wow.
I'm in the location now, and they're going to be bringing the bed and sofa here very soon.
Wow.
So when it comes in, I will go off camera, but I'm here.
All right. Well, you have to moderate it, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's your baby.
I will.
So you're going full swing into this Airbnb business.
Short-term rental in general, yeah.
Ah.
The first one was so good, I had to do another one. And this is in Brookhaven.
Okay.
So I'm very close to the city.
Okay. An apartment?
House.
Okay.
4-bedroom.
Wow. Wow.
I'm going big now.
Wow. That's huge. That is huge. That is huge.
Okay.
Interesting.
We need.
Yeah. Let me just, you want to send the message on the group chats that we're open?
Okay. Should have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Hello, Hunter. Hi. Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Okay?
Hello, Hunter.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great.
Awesome. We are
Thank you, Hunter, for
you know, it's I've heard so many great things about you, and we're looking forward to this session, to learning about the future of our world.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a really exciting topic.
Good.
So I'm making sure I've got it loaded here to share.
Okay.
I think we need to give him rights to share, Doc.
Let me see. I believe it should be my default, but let me quickly confirm that.
Hunter, do you maybe want to attempt to share, and let's see.
Yeah. Let me.
All participants can share.
Okay. Got it.
All right. Let me open up the doc and then share and make sure that comes across.
Okay.
So.
Hey, Caroline, Sophie.
I'm on 200.
We have the secretariat. Madam Caroline, can you mute yourself? Hey, Sophie.
Hi,
on the road.
how are you?
Yeah, I'm always on the road.
Yeah, busy lady. Super busy. Okay, I see them. I see them. Yeah, we can see, yes, we can see you're sharing.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking to see if full screen. Let's see. There we go. All right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
So it's 2 o'clock now. Let's maybe give 3 more minutes.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, whatever works. Just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, see, people are interested in learning about the
Yes.
about this
About the
interesting
future.
topic.
Are you kidding? I even want to go and live there.
Welcome, Otumba, Deji.
Well done, madam.
Hey, powerful Otumba, the chairman of NIC.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Well, I want to learn about the metaverse, like someone said. I may be moving to.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Hello, Ruby. We see you.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hi. Hello, Bola.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, Deji. Trust you're doing well.
Yes, I am, sir. Hello, everyone.
Good.
So 1 more minute and then we'll just get the ball rolling.
Hey, Dr. Alaufi, you're welcome.
Welcome, Doc. So maybe I'll just give a brief intro on how the program will run for today. Maybe our president will briefly, since we have a guest, to briefly talk about the network, what we're about, what we stand for. Maybe 3-4 minutes, we'll do that. And then I can introduce our guest for today. And then Hunter will take it over for about 30-35 minutes. Then we'll have 10 minutes thereabout for questions and answers. Sounds good?
Yeah, great plan.
Okay,
All right.
President.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Isi, for helping us organize this. And thank you, Hunter, for obliging us to, enlighten us on this very important topic. My name is Michael Oriade. I currently serve as the president of the Nigeria-US IT Network. And we are a network of Nigerian IT professionals resident in the United States, practicing a trade in the United States. And this is just like the name suggests, it's a networking group. We want to leverage each other's strengths and also help one another grow in the industry in our respective careers, and also pave the way for incoming prospects into the IT space. So we are open to helping people who want to learn about the information technology space, and also begin to chart the course of evolving a new wave of technology smart people who would take up the challenges of the future. So in brief, that's who we are, and we're happy to have you here. And welcome to all our members. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Doc, for that very brief and accurate introduction. So I'll just introduce Hunter. In 2018, when I applied to work at Accenture, when I got to the technical interview stage, I got an email saying, "Oh, you're going to be interviewed by Hunter Larson." I'm like, okay. I checked him up on LinkedIn, and then when I saw his profile, it was scary. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So the day for the interview came, it was a 1 hour interview, and it was the hardest interview of my life. And but it was hard. I just was able to connect with Hunter. I just felt he was someone that was easygoing, just technically hard, but easygoing as a personality. Um, so I've been there 3.5, almost 4 years now, and I'm thankful. So that is Hunter. He's a managing director at Accenture. He leads a lot of initiatives that that talks about the future, that looks into the future, innovative stuff like that. So Hunter, when I reached out to him a few weeks ago, saying, can you help our network with this topic, and he was excited to be here. So thank you, Hunter, for joining. The session is being recorded because we have other members who are not here, so they will have to listen to this at some other time. So if that's okay, you could take it away.
Sure. Yeah, that's perfect. Well, thanks everyone for having me. Thanks, Izzy, for the intro. And before we get into this, a couple things probably to touch on. Izzy mentioned the interview and how challenging it was. And I think, the technology world we're in today can feel overwhelming. And we get through some of the metaverse, you'll see there's, especially towards the end, such a variety of topics. And one way to see this is to feel overwhelmed. I think another way to see this is look at the opportunities. That there's so many different avenues to get engaged and get skilled on. So I think that's really interesting. I think it touches on what Michael was saying too, with looking at kind of evolving and where we go. With this deck of slides, towards the end, I wanted to touch on why is it important? And I think it's that same chord of these are opportunities in areas that may strike a passion or be an interest that is open to everyone to explore. And there's just a lot of different avenues to take this. So we are brainstorming ideas with Izzy for the metaverse, and the topic here we chose on is bridging the metaverse. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on why we chose the word bridging. But I want to start with a metaverse, coming soon. And when you hear the metaverse, I put up some, words, a word cloud that when we talk about the metaverse, you may hear cryptocurrencies and crypto and NFTs and even blockchain. You may hear some companies that have come out. The Sandbox is a company that's been getting a lot of noise about the metaverse. Decentraland. There's companies that we know today that are trying to step into the metaverse, and that Microsoft is a really good example. But there's also, I put up here, Oculus and Meta. Facebook really, I think, kicked off this whole topic of the metaverse when they mentioned rebranding their company called Meta. But I think what's really important to know is, metaverse, there's a lot of words together, but it's still evolving and being defined. So we'll talk through really what we mean when we say metaverse and other people say metaverse. So just a brief intro about myself. As Izzy mentioned, Hunter Larson, Managing Director at Accenture. Back when I was in college, I published a paper on working with quadriplegics and people that couldn't interact with computers in a normal way. They had a headset, and we were able to track their eyes, and their blinks were used as clicks. And this was different ways that you interact with browsers, the internet. And I think that's really evolved. It's been an interest in my career of what are some different ways. We've got mobile phones, but other patterns. In the present, I've got here myself and a couple robots that I've helped to bring to Accenture and then done some proof of concepts with. But on the right-hand side, there's an example of, this robot allows you to interact in the metaverse. So, this robot, not just, works with the physical world, but you can control it using a headset. And it's in a really interesting space. And that's what we'll touch on a bit, where you've got a virtual world that we talk about the metaverse, and you've got a physical world, but they're not separate. You can start to link those together. And that's an area that I'm helping to explore a bit, among other things. That was quick background on myself. I wanted to raise a word of caution when we talk about the metaverse, because there is a lot of excitement right now and a lot of people that are interested in it. And in the technology space, this is a really interesting graph that is a way of describing new technologies. It's called Gartner's Hype Cycle. So a company, Gartner, has published what happens when a really interesting, popular technology comes out. We don't know enough about it. And this chart left to right is kind of the trigger of the technology coming up. And then the peak of expectations, that first peak is this technology can solve the world and can do everything and anything. And we're, if I had to guess, starting to go down that peak where we reached the top when Facebook came out and every company started talking about the metaverse. And we're going to start hearing things that don't work and why the metaverse maybe isn't a good solution and why it was all hype. And that will bring us down to the trough of disillusionment, where maybe this was just a big talk and there's nothing to it. But I think what we'll see that I'll try to talk through is the slope of enlightenment is a realization of there's some really interesting aspects of the metaverse that we expect to stick around and really transform our world, companies, how we interact, a whole bunch of areas we probably can't predict. And that gets to the plateau of productivity where there are some use cases. It wasn't quite what we expected, but where the metaverse will apply. So I was trying to think of how you describe the metaverse. And I think one foundation is, if you think of the internet, and particularly when the internet started, if you look at the upper left-hand corner and you think of a website called sample.com, they would have a sign up page, which would say, give us your email address, give us a password, sign up and create an account. If you had to pay, they'd ask for your billing information. And if they wanted to display an ad, they'd say, here's an ad that they've sold to someone, a little space on their web page, and then you get an ad. But in the bottom section, example.com, instead of signing up directly, they link you to Facebook or Google or an email, and you sign up there, and those are your credentials. You don't have to save a new password or new user ID. It's the same identity that can go across many different websites. The bottom side, instead of entering billing information, you're paying with Amazon or PayPal or some system, and it's the same payment that you have again across websites. And then the ad, if I was looking at cupcakes, when I come to this website, I may be shown cupcakes because it knows based on other places I've been, and this is cookies, how cookies work on the internet. That's an interest of mine. It can show me an ad. And this is where we start to get into this concept of a metaverse, that we're going to be in virtual spaces, moving from place to place or different areas, but there's going to be a common identity that we may have or a common billing approach that may have. And ads is going to be a really big part of this, but there'll be some profile that the ads are able to figure out about you that will come with you from place to place. So that's an example of the internet. And we'll talk through how that really works when we get to the metaverse. The last one here, I listed out wikipedia.org inside example.com, where you can launch yourself from one website, example.com, to another website, wikipedia.org. And that's an interesting concept that, in the metaverse, you could be in one space and then however you navigate, teleport, a portal, some kind of movement and click and end up in another space. That's seamless. So those are some concepts that are really building on how the internet's been evolving. And this brings us to, there's no single metaverse. So there is no one place you can go to and say, I'm in the metaverse now. There's a few different ways that metaverses are built. And I wanted to touch on kind of the two types that I tend to hear described. One is towards the top, the closed metaverse. And if you think of Facebook's headset, an Oculus, now called the Meta, that you put onto your head, and then from there you log in, via Facebook and confirm your identity in Facebook, and then everywhere you navigate, you are known, through this headset, and that's a single identity. But if your headset, breaks down and your Facebook account gets deactivated, you no longer have access. They have that total control. And I think another interesting area that is blurry but kind of a metaverse is mobile apps. So that's really controlled largely by Google Play, the Android store, or Apple Store, where you can log into a game and then log into a second game, and some activity you've done in one game, whether it's your user ID or some rewards or some ads, starts to be shown in another game. But again, that's kind of a closed metaverse, if you lost access to your Android account, you couldn't travel to any of these games. You couldn't interact with them. So that's this kind of single point of identity and where everything is managed end to end. If you have an open metaverse on the right-hand side, is you can log in and bring in your email or bring in one of your social IDs. And then there's a wallet too, but this isn't centrally owned. You can swap out your email with a different connection or your wallet. And if you're logged into 10 different places, there isn't one metaverse that is overseeing all of them. They're connected to each other loosely based on these links of IDs and wallets. This bottom right-hand side, Ready Player Me, this is a really interesting example of, instead of logging in with like a user or an email, it's a full 3D avatar. So in one game, you'd have this 3D avatar, but when you move into a second game, you'd bring that same avatar. So you wouldn't have to create a new skin of yourself or a new look. And if you get clothes, you can update your clothes, and every I say game, but there's a lot of different ways that we'll interact, we'll talk through. But your clothes would be updated in all of them. So it's this way that you start to have these pieces that you can, it's like components you tie together, and it'll be across many of these different kind of metaverses or experiences. So how will we connect to the metaverse? And I wanted to look at it from a few different areas that I've heard described. Virtually is really what you hear most. And if we're here on Zoom together, so you can see that we're connected on Zoom, and there's talks of different, these are really collaboration tools, but different tools providing different experiences. So right now there's video chat, but you can see I saw several people that had their background was changed out to it's some other environment that they pick. And not too far away, and this is already being shown in some places, you can change also your full appearance. So instead of changing your background, you could do that. You could also change what you look like, and you could have different accessories and clothing and other items. And that's really this kind of virtual space that you're starting to get into and interact with people. I included voice control systems, and in the middle is a Alexa. It's called the Alexa Show, which has a video chat as well. But our interactions with the metaverse are going to include a heavy component of voice in some cases, where it can detect your voice and recognize it. It's really powerful when you start looking at working with people that speak different languages, and there is almost real-time translation that you can do where you don't speak the same language, but there's a translation that can translate in real time, communicate with each other. So there's some really interesting aspects of how voice works and how you collaborate there. And then what your virtual identity looks like. There's a lot of talk around this kind of 3D aspect, and I've seen kind of a 3D person with the head of a screen, so you can video chat and see their screen, but the rest of them is 3D. So there's a lot of different ways that this will be built. But those are a couple of things around kind of the virtual experience of the metaverse. The second is the hardware. And when I talk to people have different ideas of the metaverse. The top area is frankly the area that I hear the most when people talk about the metaverse is tablets, phones, mobile devices. It's not necessarily a headset that you're on using glasses, but it's being able to see something virtually. And it may be using a camera that you can scan the real world, but also it's something that's very close to how we interact today. A lot of our work that we do, or chats that we do, are our phones or our laptops and devices. So hardware, that's one of the areas. I touched on the voice systems and how those are built. And these bottom three are getting into the headset. So we've got Facebook's Meta that you can strap onto your head, and you see really a 3D experience, a virtual world. And you can't see the actual physical world you're in. So it completely replaces that experience. Apple hasn't launched yet, but they're working on an experience. And this last one is from Snapchat, these spectacles. But these are all starting to evolve where you don't just have a virtual world, but you can also start to see the physical world and kind of blend a virtual and physical world. So this probably, isn't the full list. We're going to see some other hardware that isn't invented yet for how you work with the metaverse. But these are some big areas that we're seeing discussed when you talk metaverse. I mentioned video games because that's an area that has gotten a lot of attention that we tend to think of. And going back to what I was mentioning, so we've got Xbox Game Studios in the upper left. If you're to log in your Xbox account, there's a lot of different games, and you've got one identity that you can bring between different games, and there's some activity and probably some avatars, like a 3D character that you'll have that you can bring to different worlds. Again, that's kind of a closed system, but it's a very large system that Xbox and Microsoft has. Sony has a similar offering. Fortnite is a very popular video game, and that has a lot of customization you can do with your avatar, your skins. But that's also kind of a mix of video games and a place where people hang out, and there's concerts that are held there and different other events. Roblox, it has a lot of kids that play this, but they've done probably the most advertising, and we'll talk through that in a little bit, of not just playing the video game, but real world companies that are advertising or doing work in Roblox. The last two are, I think of them as franchise. It's a very large set of multiple video games, multiple different ways, movies, TV shows. And if you think of these, when we start talking metaverse, if you were to play like a Star Wars game and have a character and build them and do something, and then move into another Star Wars game, the concept of the metaverse is that these would be linked, and what you did in one game could transfer over. So you could have some of the same skills or games or money or accessories and bring it to the other world. So how you start to link these across different experiences is really that evolution of the metaverse. Collaboration. So, a lot of this is, in a meeting environment or when you're working with people virtually. We've got, Zoom or Microsoft Teams or a number of other programs that are video chats. But down here, Meta, previously Facebook, has really tried to invent a way that you do this in the metaverse, purely virtual. So these are characters that are looking at a screen, and you've got your computer that is brought in, and you can see your computer screen in the metaverse. So there's probably going to be other ways to interact, but it's starting to move beyond, here we're in a video chat, we start to change the background, we can change the way we look. Soon we'll be able to change the whole environment that we interact in. And, I think we've got two more areas of how we connect. This is a really interesting one, the experiences. And I was reading about this one just a few weeks ago. In the upper left-hand corner, this basketball game. It looks a lot like a video game, but it's not. It's actually a stadium where they put like 75 real-time cameras that were able to monitor all the players and all the action and transfer that digital code into a 3D representation real time. So you look like you're watching a video game, but it's actually a real game that's being played out. And it allows a few interesting things with camera angles, and if you want to pause and rewind, but they've captured all the information in real time. And that's something that was just broadcast in the last month. So that's, we're just at the forefront of this, and there's going to be a lot more coming out there. Watching movies, you can watch movies particularly with a headset and change your experience to have a very large screen that you're looking at, and you don't have to do that alone. In the metaverse, you can link it so that you have your friends there and multiple people sitting and watching the screen and talking together. Disney's building an entire virtual theme park that you can have and interact with, and how that will be shaped up, we'll have to see. But again, that's an area that's really an experience of how you travel and go all virtually. And then the last one is shopping and retail. And there's two different ways to do that. One is, in the metaverse, in this virtual environment, shopping for virtual goods. You could also buy something that you see in the virtual environment, but it's a physical good that will get shipped to you. And even in physical stores, we're starting to see there are some items you can buy in the metaverse while you're in a physical store. So that brings us to extended reality. It's also called augmented reality. This is where you really truly blend the physical world and the virtual world. And this top area is, I believe it's Microsoft's HoloLens, but Microsoft built a headset that lets you see, with glasses, the real world, and also overlay some kind of virtual world. So what they have here is a wrench or some mechanical tool, and it's instructing with a pop-up screen how this tool should be used. And the person has the physical tool in the real world, and they're watching kind of the virtual use and trying to mimic that. So it's a great way that this could be a video that's recorded, so they could watch the video and in real time see it. This could also be someone halfway across the world that has on a headset that's explaining to them and is doing something with the tool and they're simulating it. So it's a way to connect that virtual and physical and see that right there. The next three below that on the left-hand side is a popular mobile game by a company that makes Pokemon. It's particularly called Pokemon Go, where you're in a physical world, but your phone can know where you are in that world. And there are markers that you'll leave and items that everyone can see in that physical world, but only through this virtual screen. So this is starting to map really globally. This company has all of the different information around what they have in different places, different landmarks, and then you use your phone to interact with that. This middle area is some physical signs that are on some trees, but they've got boxes with black and white kind of patterns that are a QR code. And you can scan that and up will pop some information. And that's on your screen. And what I've seen is there are places where you can leave a note for someone else virtually. And then the next person that comes by can see that and interact. So that way, the physical world looks the same, but you're enriching it with virtual information. And then the last one on the right is a shirt that they were able to overlay the inside of a skeleton and other medical information. And that's a really popular area with the medical field of what are the different things we can do to simulate not just the human body, but different aspects in the metaverse. And the last two are, the first one's a baseball card. So you can collect a baseball card, but you'd also be collecting a virtual character as well. So in this case, you'd probably hold up your phone and scan the card and you'd see up a pop-up of that virtual character. And there might be something that you can do in a virtual world that can enhance what you have on the card, or something you buy that goes along with a card to enhance the virtual world. So it's that blended reality there. And then on the right-hand side is, this is really your house design. If you want to bring in a sofa, you can pull up a virtual sofa and then look at your world and drop in the sofa and see, is it the right size? Does it fit? Do you like the patterns on it? Maybe you want to change the patterns. You can do that virtually and see how that compares. So again, it's a really interesting blend of the virtual world and the physical world that we're in, using everyday devices like our phones and tablets. So a lot of exciting things that we covered, and I wanted to give a second word of caution. The .com bubble, when we had the internet in its early days, there was so much excitement for the internet, and so many companies got a ton of funding and investment, and a lot of people really overinvested, and this gets into the Gartner's hype cycle around expecting it could do more than it could. And you see here the chart, this was the value of the companies, and the companies were overvalued. People put in a lot of money that they expected to pay off even more, and it didn't, and it crashed. So on the right-hand side, I've got a Google search volume for Metaverse, and you can see Metaverse, when Facebook came out and talked about their company and Meta and Metaverse, that really peaked, and there was, a lot of people were Googling, what is the Metaverse? And a lot of interest there, and that's dipped down. That doesn't mean the Metaverse is going away. It doesn't mean the excitement's not there. But some of these things are kind of a knee-jerk reaction where there's a ton of excitement. NFTs, one I hear a lot about, and what I like about this graph is they show all the way up to the end these dots going up, and they predict that the dots are going to it's how much excitement and interest is in an NFT. But in reality, NFT isn't going to soar and take off. It's going to level out and come back down. So some of these you have to just kind of look at it from a point of view of, yes, this is really exciting, but let's digest this a little bit more and see what's real and how this is really going to kind of play out. So why should we care? What is it? We talked about some really interesting technologies, but beyond that and beyond kind of the cool factor, why should we care? What is it to us that we should know more about? So I want to talk about the content, and this is where our everyday interactions are starting to be impacted by the metaverse, for good and bad. Certainly, it's an interesting aspect. And I've listed here Chipotle's Burrito Maze and Chipotle's Burrito Builder. Chipotle being a company that sells burritos, these are very tangible items that you have, that you eat. But these Burrito Maze, Burrito Builders are games they built in Roblox. So a video game for kids where you can go and play a video game, and depending on how you do in the video game, you will earn rewards that you can bring into Chipotle and then redeem it for free burritos, free queso, free items. So these companies are really seeing a way to sell something physically by creating content virtually. Nike is advertising. This is, I believe, Roblox as well. They created Nike Land. And again, Nike makes athletic gear, shoes, a bunch of different products. But they are finding a way to advertise and sell virtual products. So you can have a video game character that buys Nike shoes and wears them. So that's purely virtual. So they're traditionally been a physical store that sells physical goods. Now they can sell virtual goods. They're also selling a blend of items that are virtual, but when you buy something virtual, like a virtual pair of shoes, you'll get a physical pair of shoes that looks like that virtual pair. So it's not always one or the other. There's this overlap in this interesting way, that they can pair together. And then NFT, crypto art. NFT is a whole another subject on its own, which is really, really fascinating. But when you look at an art aspect, there are ways that you can identify. Here's a piece of work that I have that's art, and you can display that physically. But if you want to bring that into the virtual world, how do you show ownership and make it unique? And that gets into NFT and having this system that really helps identify you are the owner and this is what you have. And this is still evolving, and how this will move forward, we'll see. But in these different virtual worlds or experiences, you can bring in this art and these things that you own. And if you have a home that you've built or an area that you've built, and you can put up this art, it's being able to do that. So that's the retail aspect. The second aspect, which is really, really powerful, is because of word digital twins. And this upper left-hand corner is a factory for BMW. But this is not a real factory. This is a virtual factory that was built completely from the ground up virtually. And the benefit here is, if you look at how automobiles are made, there's a delivery line of how different tools are brought in and different machines. And at some point, you're going to build a new car that's going to have new parts, and you're going to need to bring in new machines. And the question is, how do you rearrange the factory, and how do you support these different models that you're building? And there's a lot of work that is involved. And at the end of the day, they traditionally had to do this in a physical warehouse of how they rearrange it and test it out and see how it works. But in this case, they're building it virtually. So they've built it all virtually, and then they can try, if we've got a new vehicle we're bringing in, how do we swap out the different places and different machines and the outlets and where people stand, and they run this and test it. They've got virtual people walking through it. And there's quite a bit of work in how that's put together, but that is a digital twin of a real world. In the middle, this is a gear, some complex piece of machinery, but you can have every single bolt and nut, again, built virtually. And if you need to build a new version of it or build something that's slightly different, you can take those components and build it virtually, whereas it's very expensive to do in the real world. So these are ways that you can save money, you can save time, you have access to things that you wouldn't even get to do in the real world. And the last one on the right-hand side is Kroger. This is a virtual Kroger store that's been built. And again, this lets them change the layout, change different aspects, and get a feel for what would the shopping experience be if we were to do this. And they can navigate it, a headset that has you in 3D is a very immersive way to see what it's like. But you can put that on and then experience Kroger without having to rework an entire physical store. And if you have someone that's halfway across the country, they don't need to fly to the one store that you've reworked. They can put on a headset and see this virtual store almost instantaneously. So these are this digital twin aspect of content. Now, there is a ton of content that we talked about the different retail aspects and the digital twins, but that's not the only challenge. Minecraft's been talked about as kind of a metaverse, a world that people have played in for years and you've interacted with. But what's really fascinating with Minecraft is people have built things 10 years ago, and there's newer versions of Minecraft, so new software and new experiences, new items, but that old world that they built in, they want to bring to this kind of new set of software. So it's a concept called backward compatibility, where you have new code and a new software, but it needs to support what's been built before. So if we talk about the metaverse, this is a lot of items are being built and stored, but in 5 years those aren't going to be discarded. And what do you do with these libraries and libraries of different assets and screws and things that you've built? You need a way to manage that and store that, and that's going to be a challenge into itself. And on the right hand side, when mobile phones came out, it was a new way that we had to design websites. So you had traditionally a computer and you had a pretty standard experience, and then phones came out and you had to build a very, very small experience. But then tablets came out, and the tablets were kind of a halfway in between size, and then there are a lot of different sizes. So you had to build websites. It's called reactive programming that would scale to certain dimensions. And if the tablets was a certain size, the sign-in would move over here, or this ad, you couldn't display anymore, just so you had the right real estate. It's similar with this kind of metaverse idea. If you are working on some professional 3D rendering desktop machine that requires really precise level of detail, you're going to have these set of items and parts that are super sophisticated, and you may want to be able to spin that around and look at it and zoom in, zoom out. So you'll have this level of detail, and this bottom right hand section is kind of a level of detail that the company described. Level of detail 0 being kind of you're not losing any of the detail. But if you then need to bring that really complex part and put it on your phone, and it's an older phone, you don't want the phone to just throw up an error and say this is too complex. You'd like to be able to support it because there's probably valid use cases to look at this, but it's not going to be able to render it in high quality. So this level of detail starts to progress, and level of detail 7 being it's much easier to run this on a low end device and anything in between. But again, that's a lot of this different content, and how do you manage all this and make sure that you can have this 3D experience in these different mediums? One more item to touch on is each company, there's so many companies trying to solve these, and this is where, as people interested in IT, ton of opportunity and a ton of different ways that we can look at this. But if company A and company B and company C all approach a problem and they all solve it, differently, we're not going to move very quickly at this together. And the metaverse is all about how we link together and share and collaborate. And that's going to be very difficult. So Pixar, they've been doing a lot of 3D content, making movies. They came up with a standard for how do you define really complex 3D characters and material. And they called it USD. And then they kind of published it and said, anyone that wants to make 3D content, if you use this standard and you build a tool that can read the standard, you'll be able to see this without custom work. So on the right-hand side, a company called NVIDIA has made an Omniverse, and you see some paint, some chalk, but they're using this USD standard, and they've stitched together a dozen different companies that they build these connectors that say, if your company wants to take a 3D item, we can quickly take it, process it, and give it in your custom format. So it's these standards that we're looking to build that people can then share, and companies are much more easily, it's easier to interoperate with each other. Blockchain being one other technology that really is a foundation for cryptocurrency that we're in, but it's a way for not relying on a single machine or a single company to do all the heavy processing and the ownership, to really distribute. Here are different areas that we can interact and say, and there's a mechanism for how you do this, but say we all agree that this is a type of experience or a type of system that we want to identify. And again, it's a standard though that people have to agree on. So before we get into kind of the last slide, to wrap things up, I wanted to put up here just kind of a highlight of, these are all different companies, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these you really touch on the different areas that we covered here. So starting at the bottom and the right, you've got connectivity. There is a lot of content that needs to be sent, and you look at Verizon or some of these companies that carry the internet and carry satellite signals, you'll need that. You'll need ads. You'll need an approach for how you kind of manage the infrastructure. We have digital twins. This bottom section is all infrastructure. So this could be in the cloud, and then artificial intelligence, how we can start to manage this intelligently so it's not so manual. That's a big portion. The middle portion really gets into how these experiences of how you tie some of these, who you are and what you want to bring into each metaverse. Whether it's the identity, you can see there's a dozen different companies that are working on your identity and what you look like. I mentioned Ready Player Me, but there's a lot of other different ways that they can approach this. Socially, YouTube, Snapchat, these are companies that are getting involved with the metaverse and how these all tie together. Different user interfaces, Nintendo's on there. We talked about Microsoft, PlayStation, and then the billings on the right. A lot of different ways between crypto wallets and blockchain and NFT and marketplaces for how you exchange all this. And then at the top are gateways. These are different places that you would start to enter and have your experience, whether it's Minecraft or Roblox. There's different VR chats. So a lot of different companies that offer that. But this is, not just kind of the metaverse in a nutshell, but these are the companies that are coming to mind today. And you'll continue to see more of these discussed. Some of these may change what they do, but this is, I like to call the bridge builders. These are the ones that are connecting our metaverse and how we tie this all together. So I think we've got about 15 minutes left, but that gets up to the last slide. If there's Q&As or Izzy, whatever we want to do next, that should cover kind of a quick run through of what I think is a good way to describe of the metaverse. So that's Michael or Izzy, back to
Yes.
Yeah, Izzy.
Wow. Yeah, this is awesome. My brain is just busting right now. Well, thank you so much. It's been extensive. I see a few hands up already. So we will just go straight to questions. Anyone have a question, you can just raise your hand and take it. So Abi Oseni, You
Yeah,
can go.
so much, Larson. This is amazing to see really what the future tends to be going to look like. I want to see if you have any input on how the metaverse will impact healthcare.
I heard, sorry, I didn't catch that last part. How the metaverse will what?
Impact healthcare.
Oh,
Yeah,
impact healthcare.
Yeah, how do you see someone playing? You know, how does metaverse likely to impact healthcare as we know it now?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and I think what we'll see is a lot of these companies and solutions come about for like an industry. I think healthcare, is a really interesting and one to focus on. What we're seeing right now, I think, as a broad statement, is Metaverse is most focused on like the retail industry and some of those experiences, and then manufacturing. So I looked at the car and the digital twins and how you do all that. I would expect, where you tend to see kind of the entry points is where can you, save the most money, or where can you, improve time in other experiences. And what I have seen on the medical side is there are a lot of different devices that need to be brought into hospitals. If you think of all the different types of hospitals and the different machines that you use, and there's a very long process for how hospitals need to buy a new device. They need to understand how it works. There needs to be a technician that can help fix it. So at the start of the pandemic, there were companies that no longer could do like a road show where they no longer could bring everyone to a site and show off all the medical devices. So they would put a medical device on a truck and drive it around the country and bring it to hospital to hospital. But instead, you can build this device in 3D and then show someone, whether it's through a tablet or on a headset, and they can open up the door and the technician can see and ask the questions. How does this work? How would I bring this in? So those medical devices is one of the first things that I'm seeing in the metaverse.
Wow, that's an awesome perspective to things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. As an extension to that question, will the idea of remote surgery fit into this universe? Is that a different space entirely? We've been hearing about doctors conducting surgeries remotely.
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge with remote surgery is the precision that's required. So I've seen robotics that we're working on, and what they do have is they have a doctor can perform kind of the high level tasks when it gets down to like where you really need to like sew a stitch. And then at that point, the robot can take over, and it has artificial intelligence at that end, and it knows exactly that kind of precise movement. But the doctor can line up the rest of the parts. So yeah, I think that's a great example, kind of, and also blending in AI there as well.
Awesome.
Do we have any other questions?
I will take another question. A couple of years back, particularly concerned as it relates to the late Michael Jackson, we had an experience of holographic. I think for me, it was for the first time. So how does that fit into this space? Is holography really part of the metaverse?
Yeah, so when we talked about how we connect virtually, there's probably a small set of companies that generate most of this content, in 3D and most of these experiences. The two that come to mind for me are a company called Unity and a company called Unreal. I'll mention Unreal Engine, but they make video games like Fortnite, the company Epic does. But if you've ever watched some TV shows, including The Mandalorian, or if you've watched movies, The Matrix, they use the same content to render these cars and an entire city in The Matrix, or The Mandalorian, the background. And the Unreal Engine actually has an option that says, if you want to build some content for a music event, a music venue, here's how you do that. So they would have those tools to build that hologram and change the lighting and all the other experiences. If you have screens, how you synchronize that, with all the other devices. So yeah, that's very much kind of a 3D type experience that's hologram, whether it's virtual, real, or that as well.
Yeah, this is a conversation that has to continue because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It's relatively new to me, and as a group, we will be looking at 3 key areas. Investment opportunities, for instance. I know most of our people want to make money. Another area is how do we experience it? Experience the metaverse as consumers. And then also from a career employment perspective, how do we fit into the industry and participate? Those are the areas that will concern us as a group. So I know that this conversation is going to continue, and
Cool.
we'll be calling on you again. So don't be
yeah. Well, and I think this probably touches on a few of those items, the investment and some words of caution. And like, it's a little hard to predict. A lot of excitement, but where this goes, you will have to see. And then, yeah, a lot of different ways to experience it. And then also the careers, a lot of different ways to go. So I think the nice thing is there's a lot of options, but as we said at the beginning, this is overwhelming. I've spent a lot of time in this, and even some mornings I'll wake up and come across a couple articles, and it takes me, a few days to just digest what I just read that day. So there's a lot.
I can imagine. Like Dr. Issa said, my brain's buzzing right now.
It's buzzing.
I do have a question. This is all good. Thanks, Hunter. This is, as everyone is saying, I think we're all gushing, so very eye-opening. You talked earlier about NFTs, and I think one of the things, like most people here, I have more than a passing interest in this space, even though I have not, maybe either for lack of time, have not been able to wrap my mind around how this world is shaping. And I have a lot of interest in the metaverse, and I have in NFTs. The problem, though, and maybe it's because of my small head, but the problem is that I'm not able to put the two together. And I don't know exactly. I saw people, for instance, everybody knows he sold that art for $69 million. I don't know how the NFTs fit into this space. Is that a prerequisite to get into the metaverse? Like, what's the connection?
Yeah, so NFT really focuses on this idea of scarcity, where there's an item, like in the virtual world, you can, if you're building a virtual world, you can build the world as big as you want. There's no reason, there's no limitation, but there's some companies that, create land and plots of land, and then they'll have, like I think Snoop Dogg was one example that I read, that he purchased a plot of land, and then the land around him was worth a lot of money because people would like to be close to him. And then other companies, are buying land that, virtually is close to something, but it becomes scarce, these virtual lands. And I think that's, one way to look at it is there's an opportunity there where people will spend money in this land and buy things, and it's a good way to invest. I think where it gets difficult is if you think, hey, this land's going to be worth 10 times more in a month. I'm going to buy this, and then in a month, I'm going to sell it for 10 times that amount. I think that's a bit more dangerous from what I've seen, where if you don't have an interest in yourself, you just think someone else is going to come along and pay more money. That's probably, that's at some point, someone's going to stop coming along and paying more. So you've got to kind of look at an NFT is kind of a similar idea where it's this piece of art that you can say, I own this. Personally, this is something that I own, and I can show proof of ownership. So if you know of a video game you play, or something that you do that lets you take that art and display it, and you like that art and you're willing to pay money for that art, then that's probably a logical approach to buying it. But if your idea is, I'm going to buy this art because it's going to be worth a lot more in a month, again, at some point someone's going to stop buying it and you will have paid a lot. I'd also look out, just personally get concerned when I see places that require a lot of money as an upfront investment, because it seems like for these types of scarcity items, if you have to spend $2,000 to get started, what's the guarantee you're going to get that back? So that's something else I see with some of these companies that it's, from what I've read, people are starting to have some problems, there on that side.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think we're all learning too as we're going through this. This
Yes.
is new for everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
So in terms of, if you don't mind, so last one from me, if you don't mind, because I think going by the press, Accenture is big into this. Facebook obviously is putting 10,000 people over there, changing their name to what will reflect, as a matter of fact, Meta word. Also, to what the president said earlier, for those who are not entirely in the business side, maybe we're looking at our career and the tools that we need. So for instance, from an Accenture perspective, and you might see me talking to EC and say, can you send my resume to this guy tomorrow? Or in terms of trying to get into this space, are there any kind of particular skills, whether it's on programming side or on the design side, that you think for this group will be necessary as I'm thinking about the whole metaverse? And I know we're all trying to wrap our minds around it. Is there any particular kind of skills that you think we need to be looking out to acquire?
So the previous slide had a set of companies in different areas. But what I find is, finding something that you're passionate about or interested in, and picking one of those to explore. And I don't think there's one programming language or one technique that's gonna, pave the way for you in the metaverse. Frankly, right now there's so many different areas that are understaffed. And when you see some articles about Facebook announcing the metaverse, which doesn't exist yet, it's going to take years to build. And when Accenture came out and said we're all in on the metaverse, we said this about some other areas too. That doesn't mean we're giving up what we've worked on before. It just means that we've got a target that we're going to move towards, and we're going to be building in that direction. But it's going to take a while. It's going to be a journey, and there's going to be a lot we can continue to learn. So I'd say looking at some areas that are interesting, and whatever gets you up in the day, and of the course of 2 weeks, if you're not interested enough to spend more time on it, that's probably not the right place to be excited about. But that's what I'd look at.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any final questions before we wrap it up? Hunter, will you be kind enough to give us the deck?
Yeah, I think I sent you the link, so feel free to forward that to everyone, whatever you want to do with it.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll just say final thank you so much. This has been really helpful and enlightening.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great. Exciting to talk about it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Hunter. We really appreciate you.
Awesome. Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks all. Yeah, bye now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.